This is the first ever Out and About episode that we've done.
Well, that's exciting.
Not the first guest, but the first ever Out and About episode, which is a new one for us. Right, so I'm here with Sarah Yule, the Marketing Director for KEF Europe, Commercial Director as well, dual role.
I've got a dual role, yeah, so also the General Manager for where we are today in the KEF Music Gallery, London. Which
is an amazing space, second time I've been down and it's still blowing my mind in many different ways. So thank you for the time and for joining me on this episode of Resting Pitch Face. I guess getting straight into it, I'd like to try and pull out as much of your experience as possible. So starting with brand. Obviously, brand is a massive topic, especially in digital at the moment. We're having conversations daily about the importance of growing brand, how to do it, how to measure it. I think with the last maybe 18 months, 24 months, budgets being under a lot more scrutiny than they have been prior, means that brands are wanting more performance-based, immediate, ROI-based activity. And I think the brands that have continued to invest in pure brand activity or capitalising on what they can do with brand are the businesses and brands that are winning now. I feel like the performance marketing bubble that was perhaps elevated through COVID is starting to decline. Costs are going up, platform costs are going up. I think the abundance of choice in the market is bringing the cost of entry down. So just your take on brands, how brands can capitalise, what the longer term view needs to be, and how KEF are going about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a really fascinating topic actually, and 100% agree. I think brand is everything at the moment, and I think especially now for all of the reasons you said, but I think to kind of rewind it a bit, during the kind of COVID bubble where the world is in crisis, but a lot of brands are seeing this kind of elevated demand. There's a lot of different things happening. I think for some brands, like in our sector, in consumer electronics, in home products and luxury products, we saw a huge amount of demand where people were at home and they weren't spending money elsewhere. And I think for a lot of brands, that made them almost a little bit lazy. It's like, look how amazing we are, look how smart we are, look at how our strategies are proving so successful, rather than realising that it was much more of a kind of external impact that was affecting them. It was more of a macro impact rather than a micro strategy that was seeing that success. And I think you're right, there was a huge focus on, how do we grow our direct business, our e-commerce, our performance marketing, and kind of where everyone was at home and everyone was online. It was kind of the dream set of statistics to kind of put everything together and see some good results. But what was also happening at the same time, which I think people negate to kind of think about, is that because there was this huge demand and there was huge problems with supply chain around a lot of physical products, I believe that we entered a phase where consumers became more brand agnostic than they've ever been before. Loyalties that had been built up over years suddenly didn't matter. What mattered was that they could just fulfill what they needed right there and then. And I don't think we've come out of that. I don't think brand loyalty is the same as it was before. And I think we see that reflected in other ways which we interact with our world, in terms of how people are much more likely to listen to a track on Spotify rather than a whole album as a standard, the way that people are much more likely to watch a 15-second TikTok video than a 30-minute YouTube video, kind of all of these sorts of things reflected in general consumer behaviour. And I think what's happened is, as we've come out of that whole period and then people have started to face, a lot more competition, we've got the whole kind of the death of the cookie, the increased cost for performance marketing. You've got budgets being decreased because demand is now going back to kind of a more normalised level for a lot of brands. A lot of people are going, right, we need to cut our budgets, we need to reduce our budgets, we need to kind of keep everything as minimal as possible. And I think you're right. It's kind of like the people that have got guts to invest in brand right now, I strongly believe that they are the ones that will win. And I think it's not necessarily the traditional spends of what people need. I think when people think about brand, they think about huge, expensive, above-the-line brand campaigns, which are quite difficult to find a tangible way to measure. Mm-hmm. And it feels unnecessary. And that's why people start to move further and further down the funnel of where they can actually do something where they can measure it and they can see exactly how they're getting return on investment. And I think it's thinking about it wrong. I think people get focused into a real short-term mentality when times get difficult and really forget to kind of zoom out and think longer term what they're trying to build. And I think it's just as, when there's an economic crash and you see people who sort of buy up properties in that period, if they've got the guts or the money or the ability to do so, then it usually ends up being good for them in the long term if they can weather the storm. And I think the same thing here. I mean, a lot of people have said with this space, oh my gosh, you've just opened this huge central London experience centre now when other brands are cutting back. Why? And I think, one of the things is this was always part of the vision. KEF is a British brand. We wanted to have a place where we could celebrate our brand in the UK and it be our global flagship. So it's been a plan for a number of years. And if anything, probably COVID just delayed that. But also it's like, well, why not now? Now is when it's really needed. Now it's when this is one of the best ways that we can control the way people experience our brand and we can deliver an authentic, high-fidelity experience for more people to enjoy. So it's kind of now feels like a perfect time to do that. And I think, beyond that as well, I think that we're just in a time where things that a few years back probably would have felt unheard of, there's much more chance now to go down different routes of marketing. And one of my favourite areas of exploration, I think over the last year, and something we're definitely focusing on as a brand going forwards, is the idea of collab marketing, but with other brands. So for me, I think this is an area which is quite underdeveloped. I don't think there's many people that are doing it. Usually it's kind of a sponsorship relationship. So, brand A pays celebrity B or brand X to associate their brands and try to be more cool, mm-hmm. usually, So that tends to be sort of my experience of how it works, where you get like the bank that sponsors the music festival or something and, or they, the clothing line that does a drink, but it's not a real partnership. It's kind of a sponsorship and it always sort of feels a little bit corporate and a little bit try hard. But we had an experience, starting from a few years ago, basically, KEF were chosen as the audio supplier for Lotus cars. Mm-hmm. And immediately, when we were working on that partnership, we realised there's a huge synergy between us as companies. We're both British companies. Lotus are a little bit older than us, but, we're 62 years now, 63 years, they're 75, 76 years. But, we're both founded in kind of, rural Britain a number of decades ago. We both had innovation at the core of kind of our initial founders' vision. We've since gone on and grown and been really respected in now separate industries. But then, over the last few years, we've really started to look at the future of automotive and the future of high fidelity audio. And so now we're at a point where actually their new all-electric hyper cars seem like a perfect place for KEF actually to introduce our technology. And unlike a lot of other audio brands, not to name names, we actually designed the speakers that went in. So it is actually proper KEF technology rather than just a KEF branded mm-hmm. product off the shelf. And so when working with them, it was like, actually, if we had a Venn diagram between people that really liked audio and people who really like cars, I reckon that would have a lot of overlap in it. And we realised that we've got no competition at all between us. And actually, we're reaching a lot of the same press, a lot of the same consumers, a lot of the same audience, and that people that were probably in the market for a new luxury hypercar were probably in the market for a new luxury audio system as well. And it just opened up so much possibilities to have a really authentic, meaningful, collaborative relationship with the Lotus team to promote their cars, promote our products in a way that really gelled naturally. You could tell a great story around and actually for both companies reduce your costs. right? So you're not spending more on doing brand activity. You're actually spending less, but you're using each other's brand to amplify your voice. So in the same way that influencer marketing does this, of saying, you know, we can pay or gift influencer X to help amplify our voice with their followers and their network and their audience and create a network effect. Kind of what I've been quite interested in is actually doing that with brands, of finding complementary brands where you can create network effect between your audience, but in an authentic way, which actually helps save costs. And then with those saves costs, you can then invest it into areas where you do want to be able to invest X amount of money and measure your returns and know that you need to spend a certain amount to do that. So it kind of sort of feels like a better way of doing things. So that's something that we're sort of exploring quite a lot at the moment.
I think that as an execution is a perfect example of collaborating with a brand that fits your demographic, but also when you bring two brands together that have got heritage, typically they will have an audience. So bringing two established audiences together, it's a huge leverage opportunity. And I think the trend of working with creators and influencers, whilst it's valid and it's effective, it's quite short-term and short-sighted. Whereas doing a collab like that has so much long-term benefit from so many different angles, and having the bravery almost as a brand to look at that at the very sort of top of the funnel and think that's going to open us up and get us recognition and develop our name longer term, and then the other activities, the performance-based stuff, will fall in and collect those people. And I agree with you, it's a huge untapped opportunity that a lot of brands overlook, but I think the key is partnering with the right people. I think you see a lot of these brand collaboration attempts that are just trying to do a brand collab with a short-term view.
Yeah.
And that's where it falls down.
I'd agree, actually. I think it's probably a dynamic that I hadn't thought about directly, but had been in the back of my mind in how to think of this, because I think that aligns with what you're saying about kind of a lot of the influencer marketing activity. It's all about kind of, you know, how many stories will they post, or will they do a reel and how many views on that reel, and it is quite short term. You know, maybe if it's a YouTube influencer, you know, that content does last a little bit longer, but it's still kind of very much that video, that moment. What's the initial spike? How fast does it grow? You know, all of that sort of thing. How many clicks are we getting back if there's referrals, and tracking on all of that stuff. And I think with a relationship like the one with Lotus, you know, that's been going on a few years now. And it works both ways. So it's kind of, you build a certain level of trust. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you know, you have sort of ambassadors, but those ambassadors are other companies, and it starts to filter down. So then, you know, whenever we're doing an event now and we think, oh, it could be quite cool to get a Lotus car there, you know, we'll reach out to them and see if they're interested. And if they're interested and they have availability, they'll support us. And likewise, if they're doing an event, it'd be like, oh, it'd be cool to have sound here. They immediately associate us with sound, and they'll call KEF and be like, hey, we're doing this event, you know, would you be able to help us? And so it's built this kind of natural way of working together. And we know that, you know, when we do posts together or we do press, we're naturally going to get the mentions. So, you know, we look in we use Cision for our press clippings and tracking. You know, we can see how much press is being generated with Lotus keywords. You know, we can see, you know, in terms of our website, how many links and clicks we're getting through and how many people are reading that page and then what they're going on to look at afterwards. So you have got tangible ways of starting to measure the impact that has. And I think that kind of way of thinking has then helped us with this place as well. So, you know, outside of the marketing for Europe, I said I'm also general manager for this space, and that started off actually with me helping with the kind of the tech side of things, because as you may know from my background, I'm a bit of a secret double nerd. So you know, I've got a background in sort of sound engineering and tech, so I was kind of helping put this together, and
I think you downplay that quite a lot. I think the depth of that experience and that expertise is probably something you should surface a bit more.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've kind of always been obsessed with music and the arts, but I realised quite early on that I was never going to be a performer, so to speak. And my favourite subjects at school were like maths and science and stuff. You know, I wasn't necessarily a natural artiste, you know. And so I wasn't quite sure how it was all going to come together. And I remember when I was about 14, I was doing like some BBC bite-sized revision or something, and I don't know how I came across it, but I came across, jobs at the BBC pack, and I found this one called sound engineer. I thought, that sounds cool, I nearly swore then. I was like, that sounds cool.
Feel free.
and I thought, because it's basically a sound engineer is someone that, records audio, and there's different elements of it. You can be specialised in the recording or the mixing, so sort of the balancing of the levels and the production, and all of this side of things. And I thought, well, this is great because I can get to be around the musicians or the audio or the band or whatever. I don't actually have to perform. And then actually the recording side of it sounds quite nerdy, so my maths and science stuff is ticks the box as well. So yeah, I started off kind of doing physics and music tech A-levels and City and Guilds sound engineering college and a few private courses, and I went to LIPA, which is the Paul McCartney School in Liverpool. I did my undergrad in sound technology, and so yeah, kind of did some freelance stuff, studios, used to do some remixing, some production composition and stuff, but I kind of fell into more the commercial side of the industry.
You must be a rare find in this sector in terms of having the engineering expertise and the marketing expertise, and then you've got the commercial side as well. Yeah,
I think it's surprising that there isn't more people, I think personally, that have got kind of those different fields. I think for me, authenticity is always something that personally is really important to me, personally and professionally. And I think as I started to kind of move more and more through sort of more corporate world and kind of commercial roles, which I realised I really enjoy as well, maybe kind of building on the maths interest as a kid. But I think also, to be honest, I was probably a little bit of a entrepreneurial character from a young age. My first job was working at a bakery, and it was like £2 an hour. I worked out within my first week that at the end of the day, they threw everything away at the end of the day. And it couldn't be sold.
This is amazing.
So I kind of said, what's the score with this? Do you just chuck it all away? They're like, yeah, we chuck it away or give it to the local pig farmers. And I was like, is it all right if I take a bag or two? They're like, yeah, sure. So I was like, sweet. So what I used to do is I'd get a load of bread, slice it up, get a big bag of donuts, and I'd go around my mates' houses, right, and I'd sell their parents a sliced loaf at half price of freshly baked bread that day, cash, and I'd sell my mates' older brothers bags of donuts, which they would appreciate in the mid-90s for reasons that I don't want to go into right now, and get sort of a little bit of extra pocket money. So that was kind of, I guess, ingrained in me to kind of think quite commercially, I guess, about things without really realising that was something I was into. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed that side, and I think, my first job in the industry was working for a lovely guy called Tony Larking for a brand called Teal Audio, and he put a huge amount of trust in me. Like, I see him as family almost now. He's a lovely guy. But he put a huge amount of trust in me and quite quickly put me in a position in my early 20s where, I was looking after international distributors. I was travelling to trade shows. I was involved in product development and marketing and social media and artist relations and all of these different things. And it was really, really great experience for me and enabled me to then sort of progress, I guess, quite quickly in my career into those sorts of roles. But I think it was when I got, I'd been then at a company called In Music, which is like Akai Professional and Newmark and Alesis and Denon Marantz and kind of a bunch of kind of pro and MI brands. And then I went to work for a startup, and I got into that whole VC world. And I had an experience there where I realised as they're going out for investment and the numbers are starting to get quite high, they want an executive leadership team that's either scaled a company to £100 million previously as part of their experience, or they're just looking for a C-suite that's full of MBA grads. And I was sort of very aware all of a sudden that I didn't have a kind of even a business studies degree. I had a degree in sound technology and I was a sound engineer professionally. So that was kind of what really inspired me to then look at exec MBA courses. So I think it was 2017, I decided to go back to uni, which was hard, I'm not going to lie, but I started to do an exec MBA at Warwick Business School, and they've got a campus at the Shard in London. It's an amazing location, it's beautiful views over London, but really fantastic course. And I mean, it was really, I'd go so far to say it was really life-changing for me. Like, I think meeting the people that we met, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but like I did meet some amazing, inspiring people from around the world in all different industries. And, you know, I got to study, I got to do my accounting and financial management at Rutgers University in New York, and got to have a day on Wall Street with the global S&P Global. And I got to go to San Francisco and study entrepreneurial finance and work with some startup investors. And I got to go to Milan and do luxury business management at the Bocconi School of Management. And so, you know, all of these sorts of different experiences were so valuable in terms of challenging the way we think. I think we can all get so stuck in our ways of kind of, yep, tried that, doesn't work, and this is what works, this is what we do, this is how. And naturally human beings are repetitive in behaviour. We're creatures of habit. And I think it's really important that we're constantly challenging our own internal dialogue about everything, about the world, about our world views, about the way that we work, our disciplines, our principles, and keeping fresh, like challenging ourselves constantly to try and think differently. And I think that was a really good reminder for me of kind of why that is so important, and a good kind of mix of skills. So, yeah, I think that was a very long answer, but yeah, it's kind of, I think with all of that, together, it got me to a place where now I felt I'm more authentically in position to be able to speak to all of those different areas, to be able to speak about technical stuff and sound, but also to kind of speak about commercial stuff and marketing, and feel like I can have some place of authority. And I think everyone gets that in a different way, but yeah, I think for me that journey was important, to be able to do it all authentically. And yeah, I think there's probably not so many people that are kind of multidisciplinary, but I'd highly encourage everyone to try to be like the thing that you think that you're not so good at, like try it. Try it. Because I think you don't necessarily have to be good at everything, but sometimes the diversity of application, or even just the different way of thinking about things, can be good for you, even if you and you may discover that you hate that thing and you're not very good at it, but why not give it a go? I think is I think.
Do you think that there's a path that someone else could apply that would follow your path, or would the advice out of that be that you should taste as much as you can to get you where you want to be, and not worry about necessarily the destination?
I think there's two approaches, isn't there? And I think that's generally something that's reflected in the world as well. I think there's the real specialist route, or there's the generalist route. And I would say I am very much a generalist. I think I have specialised in areas and points of my life and my career, but I would say I'm much more of a kind of generalist and holistic thinker around things. So I think it depends on your kind of personality and direction of kind of what you want to do. I think I naturally enjoy now kind of more diverse roles and kind of more natural thinking about things. That's kind of what I enjoy. So I think that path works well for people that maybe get bored or distracted easily, that do kind of need sort of a bit more stimulation or kind of thought, and do tend to be able to kind of look at consequences of actions rather than just actions. I think it works well. But likewise, you know, I've seen people that know what they like and what they do, and they're real kind of specialists in this area. But I think even when you do choose a particular channel, I think you can continue to go deeper. I think there's always additional levels. So I think even if it's like not wanting to be multidisciplinary, so to speak, I think you can still find much more depth that can layer on top. And sometimes it's both. So it feels like, you know, if I'm, for instance, say, you know, my area of speciality was e-commerce, and I'm not really interested in anything else. And for me, that is already quite multidisciplinary, because there's a science to it, there's an art to it, and it's kind of, this is what I do. But, there's probably other areas, like, if you wanted to study behavioural psychology, for instance, which feeds into it, you could get more into kind of economics, which goes into it. There's I don't think there's many disciplines that really are singular.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think it's kind of an impression. I think there's ways where you can be where it's more obviously multidisciplinary and it's harder to kind of put things together. But I think for most areas, even if you're like, I just do this and this is all I'm interested in, I think there's still so much opportunity to combine that with other areas. And the effect, I think, is the same, is that it helps you to kind of stay fresh in your thinking and in your approach, and continue to stay stimulated, because, boredom is our worst enemy, right? I always say to the team when everyone's busy, it probably annoys them, but I'd rather be busy than bored.
Uh-huh.
And I really do. The devil makes work for idle hands, and definitely I'm not good when I'm not really busy. So I think a lot of people are like that, given the opportunity to not be given stimulation, they can start to kind of lose interest. And I think when you get to a point where you're almost just on autopilot with anything in life, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, or your job, it's not a good place to be.
I agree with that. I think, just going back to what you were saying, in terms of, I would describe you as brave when it comes to your approach to marketing and how you think about it. And something that I'm trying to do at the moment is encourage the team to be comfortable failing, but with a commercial understanding of what that failure means. Do you feel like that commercial experience that you've had has given you a platform to be able to push the boundaries with the marketing side, so that you can look at a situation or look at a campaign or an activation or a collaboration and think, well, I know that that's not going to crucify our bottom line, for example. So do you think that commercial experience has elevated your comfort level when it comes to potential failure?
Yeah, I think it has, because I think it's about, there's obviously the kind of what's the worst case scenario with any activity we do? Like, what, if it goes terribly wrong, it kind of what's the potential loss, what's the potential hit, etc. I think there's also the sort of slight learnt experience of kind of, is a failure ever really a failure? And I think action over inaction is so important. I think so many companies procrastinate about implementing new ideas or trying new things, and actually what ends up happening is nothing, which is so much more harmful than trying something. So long as, what I always say to the team to try and empower them and to try and encourage this is, no decision or action is a wrong decision or wrong action if you know why you're doing it. Okay? So if you want to make that decision and you know why you want to make that decision, or you know why you want to take that action, that tells me that you've thought about it. You've put some thought into it, and you've kind of gone through the steps in your mind to know why you then want to do it. It's not kind of just a reactionary thing. Mm-hmm. You've made a purposeful decision. So then if that proves not successful, then you've got a way to actually reflect on it, because you know why you did it in the first place. So it's like, I did A because I thought it would create effect B. Actually, what happened was effect C. So now I know that A led to C and not to B. Now, if I still want to get to B, is there a different way I could do that would help me get there? Or actually, do I need to rethink this whole route altogether? So I feel like it's a really productive way of people kind of learning actively. And so long as the overall potential risk is quite low, I think it's fine. And I think that's where, as leaders, you can probably help the team, because to them, that risk is probably incredibly high because they see it as a personal failure. And if it's a budget that they're looking after, it makes them feel, duly responsible for it. So I think it's about kind of helping to own their failures with them and turn them from failures into great learnings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And almost like changing the conversation around it. So it's like, rather than, if you're doing kind of a post-campaign or a post-activity sort of analysis, rather than going like, what went wrong, changing that to kind of what did we learn.
That's exactly it, yeah.
And so you kind of make people more confident that, this is a learning process. So, just like, if you're going through, education and you do a test, rather than your teacher just going, oh, you got all of those things wrong, it's like, kind of, what areas do we still need to work on? You've just done some mocks and there's some areas, okay, what did we learn from that? Okay, these are things that we need to revisit. This is another way we can do it. Like, everything is a learning opportunity. And I think it's important for people to fail. Like, I always used to have a saying that I think people misunderstood, which was that failure is not an option. But I actually do think that failing is important. I think the saying I had around failure is not an option was more around, by any means necessary, you get something done. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you need to get this done, just saying no isn't an option. It's like, there's a way to get it done. So, all we need to do is work out how. And I think that kind of goes more to that engineering mindset of wanting to find a solution. So like, totally. In engineering, when there's a problem or you're trying to do something, you kind of go through part by part in like the signal chain or the circuit board or kind of whatever, and you try and identify where the fault would lie, and you basically test every single part of it before you say this doesn't work or there's something wrong. Before you kind of declare that, you will try every little iteration of thing to try and identify where the problem is and how you can fix it, how you can find a solution. But what you're actually doing is you're allowing yourself to fail multiple times in all of those times that you try. But overall, what you're doing is you're learning how to solve it. So it sounds like a juxtaposition, but I feel like both of those things can exist at once, which is be confident to fail, but see a failure as a learning, and feel that failure is not an option. Like, I feel they both can work together because of that. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think the positioning of it can be misinterpreted, but it makes perfect sense. And I think the soundboard engineering, problem-solving analogy that you gave is perfect, because it might be that the same fault comes back to you and you try the thing that worked first the next time around. And we're in the process. About 3 months ago, we rolled out a company-wide failure rate. So we now track and measure failure rate as a business. And the reason for that is we're trying to build people's comfort levels with getting something wrong that doesn't have a huge commercial impact, and build people's comfort in talking about doing something that doesn't yield what they thought it was. And like you gave the analogy about getting from point A to point B via point C, that knowledge is what we're looking for. So we're trying to elevate people's comfort levels in failing in a controlled way, but with the hope that that knowledge will be transferable. And that's kind of a movement that we're trying to create at the moment. And it's proving quite strange, I think, for a lot of people to adopt.
I was interested to ask, actually, like, how have people received that? Because I feel like it's an area that really strikes on some people's personal values of not being able to see themselves as a failure in any capacity, in any way, and not feeling comfortable with that at all. So yeah, it's interesting as a kind of a company policy how you've helped people get onto that journey.
Different people in different departments with different mindsets and skill sets have different comfort levels with it. And there's people that find it very uncomfortable being asked to try and fail at something. It's getting slowly more comfortable, but the way that we've rolled it out, we've tried to simplify it as best we can. So the hypothesis is a yes or a no at the moment. We don't want to put so many blockers in front of people so that the people that are apprehensive about failing in the first place just don't bother. We're trying to make it yes or no, incremental. Is it going to have a negative impact? And also the hypothesis needs to be, if you're certain that it's going to succeed, then it's not an experiment, it's strategy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we're repeating it, and we're on month 3 in July. So we'll be reporting the failure rate, and we're trying to push it up, and it's slowly, incrementally getting greater and greater. but it's been a very interesting rollout. It's been interesting to see who had discomfort with it.
Yeah, I can imagine maybe some surprises. I think one of the other real things about it is once you kind of start that ball rolling, is actually looking at what is the best way to collate all of the learnings. And I think this is something that we're still trying to kind of get better at as well, is it's like, okay, if we're reframing failures as learnings, how are we properly sort of documenting those learnings as a basis so that that knowledge is kind of available to all? Because I think what naturally sort of happens is the team that's directly involved in that learning has that learning, but it's quite difficult to get everyone up to speed with the speed everyone works on kind of that general learnings overall. So we're almost now looking at how we can collate that almost into either some sort of visual or table or something. We're trying to think what's the best way of doing it. I mean, have you started to look at that, of kind of what's the best way to put things together?
So it's company-wide, and we track it through the project management dashboard that we use.
Oh, yeah.
So it's literally visible to everybody that wants to see it across every team. And then we're reporting on the failure rate month on month. But my hope, the team don't know this yet, is that the teams will spend time at some point each month going through what they've experimented with and almost build up a database of, because there's learnings to be transferred. It's like we don't work with just one client, we work with many clients. So transferring learnings at speed is invaluable, especially in digital. I mean, it changes. AI, obviously we can't get through a conversation without talking about AI. The speed in which things are changing is unprecedented. And I think gathering knowledge at the same pace as innovation it's imperative, otherwise you're just going to fail.
There must be a tool out there, actually, now you've mentioned that. I'm thinking if you did a machine learning model where you fed it all of your learnings, that it would then kind of, you'd put in some prompts to say, want to do campaign A, this is the objectives, and it would filter through all of the learnings and give you kind of a ChatGPT style, this is what you should do based on your previous learnings. That probably already exists, right? I
think if it doesn't, we need to build it.
Yeah.
That definitely sounds.
First.
Yeah, I know Sam, our head of development, if he listens to this, he'll be like, "Oh no." That's definitely a great idea. I think that sort of segues us into AI. I mean, I've got to ask you about it. I think from an engineering mindset, like music and the disruption that it's already had on the music industry, and I mean the copyright issues that have come out, and the big artists that have had problems and spoken openly about just getting on top of it from a copyright perspective and a trademark and an IP perspective. But also then you've got people like Scarlett Johansson had the issue, didn't she, with ChatGPT, because there's a voice that sounded like hers. Where does it go? I
know. I mean, I find the whole subject really fascinating for a number of reasons. I think what scares people is that it's moving so fast. And I think generally we're not good at dealing with a fast-moving macro environment, especially around the technology. And I think especially in some industries, I mean, there's so much that I could say on this, but I think, thinking about AI, I mean, I was someone that used to watch a lot of TED Talks kind of years ago when iPads were still huge, and used to hurt my head when I fell asleep and they'd fall on me. But I remember kind of watching a talk, and I forget the guy's name, years ago, but he was talking about kind of the future of what he could imagine and about how we'd interact with technology. And that was, I think, a little bit more like, imagining kind of screens and lenses which were in front of you and how you interact. But his whole point was around how we kind of utilize this new technology in terms of our human experience. And that was something that always stuck with me, because I thought, well, whatever we do with technology should be there to enhance our human experience, not to replace our human experience. And I think this is kind of the core thing for me with how we use these technologies. I think there's so much good that can come from a lot of the stuff that can speed things up and can kind of democratize knowledge to more people. I think it's almost, because it's kind of so in over the last couple of years, and there's so much going on. I think there's a lot of kind of lazy ideas almost, which are not productive to kind of the possibilities of the technology moving forwards. And I think actually when it comes to kind of AI, you know, I think there's huge amounts that we can do with that will help us kind of navigate the complex world in which we live, and hopefully create better human experiences and interactions, and almost use it as a bit of a superpower. Like, imagine, you know, if you can kind of combine that productivity with your creativity, and you know, use it to enhance the overall human experience. I mean, during lockdown, I actually took on a little AI project, just because everyone was at home and everyone was a little bit bored, and I started kind of having these Zoom calls once a fortnight with a bunch of buddies around the world, and we were ideating about coming up with like a new keyboard or something creative. And we kind of figured, you know, there's not that much new stuff you can really bring to the format of a keyboard. Essentially, it's kind of it does what it does. And I think there was a few of us involved in this project that had formerly worked at Rowley, which was, you know, obviously quite Rowley's music hardware company that created a product called the Seaboard, which was, you know, probably one of the most imaginative reimaginations of a piano keyboard that had been around for a while. But anyway, you know, what we figured was actually, you know, if we're thinking future tech, we should do something which can involve AI and machine learning. But I think within audio especially, there is this huge fear around it, about it replacing people's jobs and taking work away. And I think that's because historically the music industry has been quite slow to respond to new technology. I think, you know, if we rewind back to the days of kind of the whole Napster situation and LimeWire and all the kind of copying, and the industry, you know, rightfully nervous about how to react to falling physical sales of records and, you know, extreme piracy, you know, was to quickly kind of move into embracing, you know, streaming as a legit way. But, you know, as has been documented, potentially some of those models are not that great for artists, and are not that great at crediting all of the people involved in making a record, and making it harder and harder. And I still think it's a sad thing that, you know, I think it. Let me put it in two ways, because I don't want it to feel like I'm just slagging off the streaming companies, because I think it is fantastic that it allows so much access for people to discover new music. And I personally, you know, think the Spotify app, for instance, has got a fantastic UX, and I love the search engine, and I love some of the little games and suggestions and things it does. But, you know, what a sick world we're in when I can pay £10 a month to listen to any track by any artist as many times as I want. Or I can pay pretty much £10 a month to read one audiobook. So why is music devalued so much? You know, and the, you know, the audiobook company is obviously owned by the company that was said to destroy the publishing industry, but actually now, you know, book sales are growing. You know, independent bookstores are still opening. You know, books are still being sold online in various platforms, and, you know, audiobooks are doing incredibly well, and, you know, it can be quite a lucrative model. But, you know, to record one audiobook as opposed to make a music album, there is a different cost base involved, and actually the return on investment is much, much lower on the musical side. So it almost devalues music overall, that it is just kind of this thing that is a tap, it's commoditized. You turn it on, you turn it off, you press a button, it generates some music. So then when you put that together with people's fears about musicians being replaced, or AI kind of, you know, becoming artists and replacing, you can kind of understand how it's valid, because we've already gone a step down the road of music being a commoditized thing that you pay a license fee for, and you turn it on and off as you needed, and it just happens in the background. People passively listen to it, or it's just the background for a clip or a piece of content, right? rather than an artistic expression in itself. So I think one of the things which I'm passionate about is encouraging people to actively listen as well, and to kind of see music and art with the value that it is. So I think rewinding that to kind of, the project that I was involved with, it was how could we do something with AI that would really go back to that enhancing the human experience. And we figured there's quite a lot out there which helps people get started on making music or making a track. There's ideas around melodies or beats. You can use different samples. There's different software now which will kind of put together some elements for you. But what a lot of creatives struggle with, especially in music, is finishing things. So I might have wrote some intros, I might have wrote a great chorus, I've got like a great 16-bar loop, but how do I get this into a finished track? And so the idea with System, which was the name of the company and the product, was something where you could basically feed it different prompts using machine learning AI, and basically help you to finish tracks. But this was going to be a kind of a hardware brain with processing power that would utilize software, but in a format that would feel familiar for people and really become the heart of the studio, kind of the heart of the creative hub. And really sort of the central economy that everything would go through. So it was the core of your system. And the people involved were myself, Sarah, a guy called Steve, a guy called Tori, a guy called Malam, so initials System. It was a fun project, and we won a couple of awards. We got a IF Design Award for concept, and we got a Muse Design Award as well for the conceptual design, and we got it showed by the Design Museum as well for a little while. But then I think as lockdown finished, and
that's such a good use of time.
Everyone kind of got back to their lives, and Manon's super smart guy who's like killing it in the product world, and he's also like signed record producer and composer and just like slaying it out there. Big up Manon. And you got Tori, who like just started working at Apple, but like guys kind of on next level doing stuff and marketing, and he's a composer, fantastic pianist based in LA. Big up Tori. And you've also got Steve, who'd like just been nominated for a Grammy, and he's like producer, he's just released his own record under the name Tave. So like everyone was like doing their own thing, and it's like now life has gone back to normal. Suddenly being startup entrepreneurs, giving it all up and doing this doesn't seem feasible. So we were kind of like, it was nice as a thought experiment. We kind of had acknowledged it was fixed in time, but we didn't do it. But I think that whole experience has made me stay really interested in kind of what's happening in that world and how people are embracing it and utilising it. And I think there is a lot more to come. I mean, it's just moving at such a speed. But I think what's really encouraging now is that there's more and more companies and organisations that are looking at kind of, the ethics of AI and, kind of how to collaborate. It comes back to that idea of collaborating. You're seeing more and more of these brands now looking at actually how can we work together to enhance this experience and to kind of think about how this is really helping people accelerate in their, human experience, and how we can use this for kind of that democratization of knowledge and helping kind of different areas and different needs. And I hope more of that. I just hope that there's more people that want to use this stuff for the power of good and overall shared experience. And I like to think that generally deep down that's what everyone wants. I think
it's going that way.
Yeah,
I think that's one thing that I've noticed. The tidal wave that was AI and the timing of it, there was fear. People were like, shit, this is going to take our jobs. Then people realised its true capability in the hands of everyday people. And then people sort of started thinking this is going to be something that enhances what I'm able to do. Efficiency, which is one of the key sort of themes when I look at AI. It's like if it can make you more efficient, great. And then I think what's happening now is people are seeing that they can maybe save a bit of time, so they're moving more towards human experience, and it's almost going full circle, and it's giving people the capability of thinking, actually, I miss being able to do this. They might go to a gig because they've got an extra couple of hours spare. And I think that's what's going to happen. There's going to be more and more of that, same as the AI influencer thing. That will become a standalone thing. it will get used, brands will do it, but then it will become commoditized, and then it will come full circle and brands will want to work with people again.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I'm seeing and how I'm viewing it. The innovation side, the efficiency side is great. I'm all for it. But I think it's definitely in the next 18 months going to push people back towards being more in-person, human, lived, touch, feel, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But I think those principles for me go into kind of every product in some ways of kind of, you know, what's the point of it? You know, why is it relevant? And I think with anything, if you have something, it's like, I think one of the first filters is, okay, if I have this product or this service or this tool, does it make what I do already better or not? You know, and I think that's kind of the first filter of anything. Like, does this help me get better? And it's like, yeah. And so if something makes it better, it's like, yeah, no, that's pretty cool. It's going to be a cool tool for me to use. Blah, blah, blah. I think in this world, the next filter is, does it make it faster? So does it make me more efficient? And if it does make it faster, cool. Now, if it makes my work both better and faster, winner. Because yeah, some things can make it faster, but actually, if it makes it a bit crapper, it's probably not great. But if it's making it better and faster, cool. And then I think, you know, the last qualifier can vary a little bit, but I think it's kind of, is it fun? Like, is it, you know, how easy is it to interact with? Do I enjoy doing it? You know, if it's kind of like a painful, laborious, or kind of awkward task, or just a boring interface, or kind of, you know, it's just like not that pleasurable. It's like, you know, say I could take this tablet and it's going to make me, you know, better and faster, but it tastes like vomit. Like, I probably won't want it, right? But you know, if something is better, faster, and it's fun, or it's enjoyable, it's, you know, then you know, or the interface is great, then, you know, it's much more likely that I'm going to really embrace that. And I think yeah, that feels like kind of where AI is going. It's kind of, look, it can do stuff faster. Okay, cool. But some of those early models, it was a bit crap. It's like, yes, totally. It's fast, but it's nonsense. Like, it's just absolute gibberish. So it's useless. And then, you know, it can make this better over here. And it's like, yeah, but why? Like, why do I need to be better at that? Like, I've never wanted to do that, you know. But then I think, you know, when it's coming, it's like, oh no, it can make what you're doing faster. It can do it better, and actually the interface now is really cool and it's fun, or there's different kind of ways in which you can experience that. I think that's kind of the perfect combination to kind of bring it all together into something that feels a lot more useful for us into the future. So we shall see.
We shall.
Where it goes.
I feel like we could sit here and talk for like days and days on end. So one final question, I think, to just wrap up would be, can you give me an example of a brand outside of KEF that you feel like is executing marketing well in today's space at like a holistic level?
It's a great question. And it's one that I feel that I should have an answer at the tip of my tongue. But actually, I mean, I see lots of like little individual things from different companies where I'm like, that's cool. But I think this is almost the point. I think for me personally, the days of having like particular brands on a pedestal as being like the epitome of great marketing, I feel they've gone. I feel it's like such a noisy environment, and you know, these pressures we talked about earlier about everything being kind of quite short term and quite kind of, you know, this is in this month, and oh, but have you seen this? I think it's really difficult for us to kind of maintain that. And I think some of the brands that used to be associated with quite innovative and cool marketing have now a lot of it feels a little bit corporate and a bit dull. I think kind of what I look at now is just little elements. It's almost like I feel like I'm creating a constant mood board of ideas almost between different brands. And I think now my kind of thing I look up to is almost like this made up kind of mush of different brands and ideas together in this kind of virtual mood board of ideas and principles, rather than a particular brand, which feels like a bit of a non-answer. But yeah, I don't think I can name a brand, but there's like lots of little elements which feel probably on their own not that interesting. But I think when you sort of start to put them all together, it can be quite interesting. I think I'll go back to saying, though, I think brands respect at the moment are ones that I feel can continue to tell a really authentic story. And I think at the end of the day, marketing is all about storytelling. I really think it is. I think it's about having a great story and being able to tell that story in a way that's authentic. And so for me, that will always win out in whatever anyone does. But I'm always interested to see kind of cool things that brands do. So I'm going to keep an eye out. And when we do episode 2, or next time we talk, I'm going to have a list and I'm going to turn my virtual mood board into an actual mood board of things which I think are cool. But for now, I'm going to politely decline naming a single brand.
Diplomatic, I like it. Well, thank you for taking the time, Sarah. It's a pleasure. I think you're a rarity when it comes to the experience that you carry and the way that you think. So thank you for affording me the time to pull some of the experience and answers out of you.
It's a pleasure, and thank you, Lee.
Cheers.
Cheers.